It was a Tuesday morning at Northwestern University, just like any other. Students shuffled across the quad with their coffee cups and backpacks, heading to their 9 a.m. lectures. The autumn leaves crunched underfoot as 18-year-old Sarah Chen made her way to her Introduction to International Relations class, earbuds in, completely unaware that in less than 2 hours, her ordinary college life would be shattered forever. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. Sarah was everything you'd expect from a typical freshman. Bright, ambitious, maybe a little homesick. She'd grown up in a quiet suburb of Chicago, the daughter of 2 computer engineers who'd immigrated from Taiwan in the 1990s. Her biggest concerns were whether she'd pass her calculus midterm, and if that cute guy from her dorm would finally ask her out. She had no military background, no connections to government agencies, no reason whatsoever to be on anyone's radar. But what Sarah didn't know, what she couldn't possibly know, was that her name had been flagged in a database thousands of miles away. Not for anything she'd done, but for something much more terrifying, something her parents had never told her. The first sign that something was wrong came during her political science lecture. Professor Martinez was in the middle of explaining the concept of diplomatic immunity when Sarah's phone began buzzing insistently. She ignored it at first. Her parents were notorious for calling it inappropriate times, still adjusting to the time zone difference, even though Chicago was just an hour away. But the buzzing continued, followed by a text message that made her blood run cold. "Sarah, you need to call me immediately. Do not go back to your dorm. Go to the library and wait for my call. This is not a joke. Dad." Her father had never sent a message like this in his life. David Chen was methodical, calm, the type of man who planned everything weeks in advance. The urgency in those few words sent ice through Sarah's veins. She quietly gathered her things and slipped out of the lecture hall, her mind racing with possibilities. Had something happened to her mother? Was there a family emergency? She made it halfway across campus before she heard them. The sound started low, a distant thumping that she initially mistook for construction work. But as she walked toward the library, the sound grew louder, more distinct, more ominous. Other students began looking up at the sky, shading their eyes against the morning sun. Helicopters. Not just any helicopters, these were black, sleek, military-grade aircraft that seemed to materialize out of nowhere. As Sarah watched in growing horror, 2 of them circled the campus like predators, their rotors whipping the fallen leaves into small tornadoes. Students began pulling out their phones, recording what they assumed was some kind of military exercise or movie filming. They had no idea they were witnessing the beginning of an international incident. The helicopters descended toward the main quad with military precision, sending students scattering in all directions. Sarah stood frozen, watching as uniformed figures rappelled from the aircraft with movements too smooth and practiced to be anything but elite special forces. Their faces were obscured by tactical gear, but their intent was unmistakably clear. They were looking for someone, and somehow, in her gut, Sarah knew that someone was her. Her phone rang again. This time, it wasn't her father. Sarah Chen. The voice was crisp, professional, with just a hint of a southern accent. "Who is this?" she whispered, still staring at the chaos unfolding 50 yards away. "My name is Colonel Rebecca Torres, United States Army Special Operations Command. I need you to listen very carefully. You are in immediate danger, and we are here to extract you." "Extract me? What are you talking about? I'm just a student." "Miss Chen, I understand this is overwhelming, but your parents' past has caught up with them, and unfortunately, with you. Right now, there are hostile foreign agents on American soil whose sole objective is to acquire you as leverage against your family. We have approximately 3 minutes before they reach your position." Sarah's legs nearly gave out. "My parents? What could they possibly?" "Your parents weren't just computer engineers. Before they immigrated to the United States, they worked on classified defense projects for the Taiwanese government, projects that certain foreign powers would kill to access. And they've decided that the easiest way to get that information is through you." The world seemed to tilt on its axis. Everything she thought she knew about her quiet suburban life, about her parents' boring office jobs, about her safe and predictable existence crumbled in an instant. "I can see you from here," Colonel Torres continued. "Blue jacket, black backpack, standing near the fountain. Start walking toward the library. But don't run. We need to get you to the extraction point before they realize we're here." As if in a dream, Sarah began moving her feet. Around her, the campus had erupted into controlled chaos. Campus security was trying to establish a perimeter, but they were clearly outmatched by whatever was happening. Students were live streaming on social media, completely unaware that they were documenting what would become one of the most classified operations on American soil in decades.
"What about my parents?" Sarah managed to ask as she walked, trying to appear casual while her heart hammered against her ribs. "Are they safe?" "Your parents are currently in protective custody," Colonel Torres replied. "They've been relocated to a secure facility. But Sarah, I need you to understand something. This isn't going to be over quickly. These people have been planning this for months, possibly years. They know your schedule, your friends, your habits. They know things about you that you don't even know about yourself." Sarah's mind reeled. "What kind of things?" "Your father didn't just work on computer systems, Sarah. He was part of a team that developed encryption protocols for Taiwan's defense ministry. Protocols that, if compromised, could expose every Western intelligence asset in the South China Sea. Your mother designed the hardware architecture that houses those systems. Together, they created something that multiple governments would start wars to possess." As Sarah processed this information, she noticed something that made her stomach drop. There were people on campus who didn't belong, men in casual clothes who moved with the same purposeful precision as the soldiers, but who were clearly trying to blend in. They weren't American military. Their equipment was different. Their positioning was wrong. "Colonel, there are other people here, people who aren't with you." "I know. We've been tracking a 6-person team of operatives who entered the country 3 days ago. Chinese Ministry of State Security, highly trained, highly motivated. They've been waiting for the perfect opportunity to grab you without causing an international incident. Our arrival has forced their hand." Sarah could see the library ahead, but something felt wrong. The building seemed too quiet, too empty for a Tuesday morning. "The library looks deserted." "That's because we evacuated it 20 minutes ago. There's a team waiting for you in the basement level, but we need to get you there without being detected. Can you see the service entrance on the east side of the building?" Sarah scanned the area. "Yes, but there's someone watching it. A man in a gray hoodie pretending to read on a bench." "We see him too. Here's what's going to happen. In 30 seconds, there's going to be a distraction near the main entrance. When that happens, Gray Hoodie is going to move to investigate. That's your window. You'll have maybe 15 seconds to get to that service door." "What kind of distraction?" "The kind that makes people think there's been an accident. Remember, Sarah, these people can't afford to hurt you. You're no good to them dead. But they will take you, and once they have you, getting you back becomes exponentially more difficult." Sarah positioned herself near a large oak tree that would give her cover. "Colonel, can I ask you something?" Quickly. "How long have you known about my parents?" There was a pause. "Your family has been under protective observation since you were 12 years old. We've had assets monitoring potential threats to your safety for 6 years." The revelation hit Sarah like a physical blow. "You've been watching me since I was 12? Sarah, focus. The distraction is happening in 10 seconds. Get ready to move." But Sarah's mind was spinning with the implications. 6 years of surveillance? How many people in her life were actually government agents? Her high school guidance counselor who had encouraged her to apply to Northwestern? The friendly janitor at her favorite coffee shop who always seemed to know when she was having a bad day? The barista at her favorite coffee shop who'd memorized her order? A loud crash echoed across the quad, followed by shouting. True to prediction, Gray Hoodie immediately stood and began moving toward the commotion. "Go now," Colonel Torres commanded. Sarah sprinted for the service door, her legs pumping harder than they ever had. The 15-second window felt like an eternity and an instant. She reached the door and yanked on the handle, terrified it would be locked. It opened. She tumbled inside and found herself face to face with 2 figures in full tactical gear. For a moment, she thought she'd run straight into the enemy, but one of them spoke with a distinctly American accent. "Ms. Chen, I'm Lieutenant Morrison. We need to get you downstairs immediately." They led her through corridors she'd never seen before, past rooms filled with equipment she couldn't identify. "How long has this basement existed?" she asked.
Let's just say Northwestern has been very cooperative with certain government agencies for quite some time. Most universities are, when national security is involved. They descended 2 more levels, far deeper than Sarah had imagined possible. The walls changed from painted cinder block to reinforced concrete, and she realized they were in some kind of bunker system. "This is insane," she muttered. "This morning I was worried about a calculus test." "Miss Chen," Lieutenant Morrison said as they reached a heavily reinforced door, "your calculus test is the least of your concerns right now. What's on the other side of this door is going to change your life forever." The door opened to reveal a command center that looked like something out of a spy movie. Banks of monitors showed surveillance footage from around the campus, satellite imagery, and what appeared to be real-time tracking of multiple individuals. Colonel Torres was there in person now, a stern-faced woman in her 40s with graying hair and eyes that had seen too much. "Sarah," she extended her hand, "I'm sorry we had to meet under these circumstances. Colonel, I need to know everything. What exactly did my parents do? Why are people trying to kidnap me? And what happens now?" Colonel Torres gestured to a chair at the conference table. "Sit down, Sarah, because what I'm about to tell you is going to redefine everything you thought you knew about your family, your country, and your future." Colonel Torres activated a large display screen that dominated one wall of the command center. Images began flashing across it. Technical diagrams, photographs of military installations, and documents marked with classification levels that Sarah had only seen in movies. 25 years ago, Colonel Torres began, your parents were part of a joint U.S.-Taiwan intelligence initiative called Project Nightingale. The official story was that they were developing civilian computer systems. The reality was far more complex. Sarah stared at a photograph of her parents, but they looked different. Younger, more serious, wearing military uniforms she'd never seen before. "Those are my parents?" "Your father, Captain David Chen, and your mother, Lieutenant Alice Wu, were 2 of the most brilliant cryptographic minds of their generation. They didn't just develop encryption protocols, Sarah. They created a system called quantum lock, a theoretically unbreakable encryption method that uses quantum entanglement to secure communications." The technical details went over Sarah's head, but she understood the implications. "And this system is still being used?" "It's the backbone of all classified communications between the United States and our Pacific allies. Every military operation, every intelligence briefing, every diplomatic communication in that region is protected by your parents' work. If a hostile nation could crack quantum lock, they could intercept and decode every secret we have." Another image appeared on screen, this one showing a schematic of what looked like a computer chip. But here's the problem, Sarah. Your parents built a fail-safe into the system, a master key that could, in theory, unlock everything. They were young, idealistic, and worried about their own government potentially abusing their creation, so they created a backdoor. Sarah felt sick. "And someone knows about this back door?" 3 days ago, Chinese intelligence services received information suggesting that the key to quantum lock isn't just hidden in some secure facility. It's encoded into something much more personal. Something that would be nearly impossible to extract through conventional espionage. The room fell silent as Sarah processed the implications. "It's in me, isn't it? The key is somehow connected to me." Colonel Torres nodded grimly. "Your parents were paranoid about the key being stolen or compromised, so they did something unprecedented. They encoded portions of it into their daughter's DNA. Not in a way that would harm you, but using specific genetic sequences as part of the encryption algorithm. You are literally a living component of the most secure communication system in the Western world." Sarah stood up abruptly, the chair clattering behind her. "That's insane! You're telling me my parents turned me into some kind of human computer?" "Not a computer," Lieutenant Morrison interjected. "More like a biometric key. Without your specific genetic markers, the quantum lock system would be impossible to fully compromise. Your parents thought they were protecting both you and national security. But they were wrong. Because now foreign intelligence services know about your connection to the system.
They've been working for months to devise a way to extract the information they need without killing you. They've developed a process that would essentially require extensive biological samples. Sarah didn't need the details spelled out. They want to dissect me. They want to keep you alive, but under their complete control while they study your genetic code and run experiments. It could take months or years, and there's no guarantee you'd survive the process. The weight of it all crashed down on Sarah simultaneously. Her entire life had been a lie. Her parents weren't the quiet, boring computer engineers she'd grown up with. They were former military officers who had made their daughter into a living weapon without her knowledge or consent. And now people were literally trying to kidnap and torture her for secrets embedded in her DNA. "What happens now?" she asked quietly. "Now, we extract you from this situation permanently. But I need to be honest with you, Sarah. This isn't a temporary problem. As long as you exist, you'll be a target. The Chinese aren't going to give up, and neither will other nations who learn about your unique situation. So what are my options?" Colonel Torres exchanged glances with Lieutenant Morrison. "We can provide you with a new identity, relocate you somewhere safe, and give you round-the-clock protection for the rest of your life. You'd essentially have to disappear. New name, new background, no contact with anyone from your previous life." "Including my parents?" "Including your parents. They're facing the same choice. Or you can help us end this permanently." The room fell silent except for the hum of electronic equipment. "What do you mean?" Colonel Torres leaned forward. "We've been developing a way to extract the genetic components of the quantum lock system and transfer them to a secure digital format. It's experimental, and there are risks, but if successful, it would eliminate your value as a target while preserving the security of the system." "What kind of risks?" "The procedure involves temporarily altering your DNA. There's a small chance, less than 5%, that the process could cause cellular damage. In the worst-case scenario, it could be fatal." Sarah stared at the wall of monitors showing the ongoing chaos on her campus. Students were still recording everything, still treating it like entertainment, completely unaware that they were witnessing the intersection of international espionage and cutting-edge science. "How long do I have to decide?" "The Chinese operatives are regrouping. Our intelligence suggests they're planning a more aggressive extraction attempt within the next 6 hours. If we're going to move you to a secure facility for either option, it needs to happen soon." Sarah closed her eyes, trying to process everything. 18 hours ago, her biggest problem was whether to major in international relations or computer science. Now she was being asked to choose between disappearing forever or risking her life to end an international crisis she never asked to be part of. "I need to know something first," she said finally. "The people trying to take me, are they here? Now? On campus?"
Colonel Torres nodded grimly at Sarah's question. "They're not just on campus, Sarah. They're actively trying to breach our perimeter as we speak." She gestured to one of the monitors, which showed thermal imaging of the campus. Several red dots were moving in coordinated patterns around the buildings above them. "How many?" Sarah asked, surprised by how calm her voice sounded. 6 confirmed hostiles, plus an unknown number of support personnel. But they're not the only ones we're worried about. Torres clicked to another screen, showing satellite imagery. "We have intelligence suggesting that a second team landed at O'Hare Airport this morning. Russian SVR, highly trained, and they're not here to cooperate with the Chinese operation." Lieutenant Morrison looked up from his own set of monitors. "Colonel, we're also tracking unusual digital activity. Someone's been trying to hack into the university's network infrastructure for the past hour. They're looking for something specific." Sarah felt the walls closing in around her. "They're looking for me, aren't they? For records about me? Your medical records, academic files, Anything that might give them insight into your genetic profile or daily routines, Torres confirmed. The good news is that we've been maintaining false records for years. The bad news is that they're not going to be fooled for long. A new voice crackled through the communication system. Base, this is Eagle Eye. We have visual confirmation on the Russian team. They're not heading for the target. They're heading for the Chinese extraction point. Torres cursed under her breath. Ladies and gentlemen, we now have a three-way international incident brewing on American soil. Sarah, I need your decision now. We can't wait any longer. But before Sarah could respond, alarms began blaring throughout the command center. Red emergency lights bathed everything in an ominous glow, and multiple voices started shouting updates through the communication systems. Perimeter breach in Sector 7. Unknown explosive device detected near the main entrance. We have confirmed gunfire on the north side of campus. Colonel Torres was suddenly all business, barking orders to her team. Morrison, get Sarah suited up for emergency extraction. Williams, I want all civilians evacuated for a 6-block radius. Chen, contact the FBI. We need this entire area declared a federal crime scene in the next 10 minutes. Sarah grabbed Torres's arm. Wait, what's happening up there? The Russians and Chinese teams have made contact with each other, and it's not friendly. They're both trying to eliminate the competition before going after you. This has just escalated from a covert extraction to an active battlefield. The implications hit Sarah like a freight train. People were going to die because of her. Students, faculty, innocent bystanders, all caught in the crossfire of an international crisis she never asked to be part of. How many people are still on campus? Sarah Morrison checked her tablet. We've evacuated most of the immediate area, but there are still approximately 300 students and staff in the outer buildings. Full evacuation will take at least 2 hours. 2 hours we don't have, Torres muttered. Sarah, I'm making the decision for you. We're implementing the emergency extraction protocol. You're going into protective custody immediately, and we'll deal with the experimental procedure later. No. Sarah's voice cut through the chaos with surprising authority. No, I'm not running. The command center fell silent except for the distant sounds of the battle raging above them. Every eye in the room turned to look at the 18-year-old freshman who had just contramanded a full colonel. Sarah, you don't understand the gravity. I understand perfectly, Colonel. You're asking me to choose between disappearing forever or risking my life on an experimental procedure. But there's a third option you haven't mentioned. What third option? I give myself up. The silence that followed was deafening. Then Lieutenant Morrison spoke up. Miss Chen, that's not an option. If you're captured by hostile forces, then they get what they want, and everyone else goes home safely. No more gunfights on campus, no more innocent people in danger. The Chinese get their genetic information, and this whole nightmare ends. Except for the part where they torture you for months before eventually killing you, and where they use the intelligence they extract from you to compromise every military operation in the Pacific Theater. Sarah, you're not just talking about sacrificing yourself, you're talking about potentially getting thousands of American service members killed. Sarah slumped in her chair. She hadn't considered that angle. Then what do you suggest? I suggest we try something that's never been attempted before. We're going to give you a crash course in being a spy. What? The experimental procedure to extract the genetic components of quantum lock? It doesn't have to be performed in a laboratory. We have a mobile unit that can do it right here, right now. But the process takes 3 hours, and we need to keep you safe and hidden for that entire time. Lieutenant Morrison caught on immediately. You want to turn her into an active agent for her own extraction. Exactly. Sarah, how well do you know this campus? Sarah thought about it. Pretty well, I guess. I've been here for 2 months, and I'm good with layouts and maps. Do you know the tunnel systems under the university? There are tunnel systems? Torres smiled grimly.
Northwestern sits on top of one of the most extensive underground networks in Illinois. Originally built for utilities and maintenance, but expanded during the Cold War as part of civil defense planning. Most people don't know they exist, but they connect to nearly every building on campus. A new possibility began to form in Sarah's mind. You want me to move through the tunnels while the procedure is happening? More than that. We want you to help us coordinate the counter-operation against the hostile teams. You know this environment better than any of us. You're motivated to end this situation permanently. And frankly, you're the one person on campus that both enemy teams absolutely cannot afford to accidentally kill. The idea was simultaneously terrifying and empowering. What would I have to do? Lieutenant Morrison was already moving towards a secured cabinet. State-of-the-art surveillance gear, miniaturized cameras, encrypted communication devices, and a few defensive tools that I'll teach you to use in the next 10 minutes. 10 minutes? That's not very long for spy training. Torres laughed despite everything. Sarah, you've been living as an unknowing intelligence asset for your entire life. Your parents' paranoia means you've been unconsciously trained in operational security since you were a child. You just never realized it.
As Lieutenant Morrison began laying out equipment on the table, Sarah realized that Colonel Torres was right. Her parents had always been oddly specific about certain things, never posting family photos on social media, never discussing work in public places, always having multiple exit routes planned when they went anywhere. She thought they were just quirky and overcautious. This is a tactical communication headset, Morrison explained, holding up a device that looked like a high-tech hearing aid. It's virtually undetectable, and it will keep you in constant contact with our command center. This, he held up what looked like a pen, is a camera with a range of 2 miles. And this, he said, showing her a device that resembled a smartphone, is a tactical scanner that can detect electronic surveillance, weapons, and human heat signatures through walls. Sarah picked up the scanner. It was heavier than she'd expected, and the screen showed a real-time map of their current location with heat signatures of everyone in the room. This is incredible technology. It's the same equipment our Delta Force operatives use, Torres said, which brings me to an important point, Sarah. The soldiers who extracted you from campus, they're not regular Army. They're from the 1st Special Forces Operational Detachment Delta, the most elite counterterrorism unit in the American military. The weight of that statement settled on Sarah. You sent Delta Force to protect a college freshman? We sent Delta Force to protect a critical national security asset who happens to be a college freshman. There's a difference. And now we're asking you to work alongside them as an equal partner. Morrison finished setting up the equipment and turned to Sarah. Before we go any further, you need to understand something about the people we're up against. The Chinese operatives are Ministry of State Security. Think of them as China's CIA, but with fewer moral constraints. They're trained to capture targets alive and extract information through whatever means necessary. And the Russians? SVR, Foreign Intelligence Service. They're here because they want to prevent the Chinese from getting their hands on quantum lock, but they also want to eliminate you as a threat to their own operations. To them, you're not a person. You're a strategic liability that needs to be neutralized. Sarah strapped on the communication headset, surprised by how lightweight it was. So the Chinese want to kidnap me, and the Russians want to kill me. Essentially, yes, which is why we need to move fast and stay ahead of both teams. Torres pulled up a new display showing the tunnel network beneath campus. Sarah, this is where your local knowledge becomes crucial. We need to identify places where the mobile extraction unit can set up safely while you undergo the procedure. Sarah studied the map, comparing it to her mental image of the campus above. What about the old observatory? It's been abandoned for years, but it has direct tunnel access and multiple exit routes. Perfect. Morrison, how long to get the mobile unit to the observatory? 20 minutes, assuming we can clear the path of hostiles. Torres nodded. Sarah, that gives us 20 minutes to get you into position and begin reconnaissance of the enemy teams. Are you ready for this? Sarah looked at herself in the reflection of one of the monitors. She was still wearing the same clothes she had put on that morning,
jeans, a Northwestern sweatshirt, and the backpack she'd packed for her international relations class. In 12 hours, she'd gone from a normal college student to a critical intelligence asset working alongside America's most elite military forces. "I'm as ready as someone can be for something they never trained for," Sarah said. "That's more honest than most recruits," Morrison laughed. "Sarah, remember that your primary objective is survival. Everything else is secondary. If a situation feels too dangerous, you extract immediately. We have contingency plans for contingency plans." Torres handed Sarah a small device that looked like a car key fob. "This is a panic button. If you press it, every American military asset within 50 miles will immediately converge on your location. Use it as a last resort." Sarah clipped the device to her belt. "What happens to my parents through all this?" "Your parents are safe, and they'll remain safe regardless of how this plays out. But Sarah, if we're successful today, this will be the last time any of you have to live in fear. The genetic components of quantum lock will be secured, the system will be updated with new protocols, and you can go back to being a normal college student." "And if we're not successful?" Torres met her eyes. "Then you'll be disappeared into protective custody, your parents will be relocated to a secure facility, and this conflict will escalate into something much larger. The Chinese and Russians aren't going to give up easily." A voice crackled through the communication system. "Command, this is Overwatch. Enemy teams have ceased contact with each other and are moving towards separate objectives. Chinese team is heading for the Student Union. Russian team is approaching from the North Campus." Sarah felt a chill. The Student Union is where most people would go during an emergency evacuation. "Exactly," Torres said grimly. "They're going to use civilian hostages to force us to give you up. Sarah, we need to move now." Lieutenant Morrison led Sarah to a concealed elevator she hadn't noticed before. "This will take us directly to the tunnel system. From there, you'll be on your own until you reach the observatory." As the elevator descended deeper underground, Sarah tried to process everything that had happened in the past few hours. This morning, she was worried about whether she should change her major. Now she was about to undertake a covert operation that could determine the outcome of an international crisis. The elevator doors opened to reveal a tunnel that looked like something from a spy movie. Concrete walls, efficient lighting, and the sense that it extended much further than she could see. "Sarah," Morrison said as she stepped into the tunnel, "remember that you have an entire team of the most capable people in the world supporting you. You're not alone in this." She nodded, activated her communication headset, and began walking into the darkness. Behind her, the elevator doors closed, cutting off her last connection to the world above.
"Command, this is Asset 1. Sarah spoke into her headset, using the call sign Morrison had given her. "I'm in the tunnel system and heading toward the observatory." "Copy that, Asset 1. We have you on GPS tracking. Current distance to objective, 800 meters. The tunnels were eerily quiet, except for the sound of her footsteps and the distant hum of ventilation systems. Sarah had expected them to be dark and cramped, but they were actually well lit and wide enough for two people to walk side by side. Clearly, these weren't just utility tunnels. "Colonel Torres, can you tell me more about these tunnels? When were they really built?" Torres's voice crackled through the headset. "The official records show utility access tunnels from the 1960s. The real story is that they're part of a continuity of government program from the Cold War. Northwestern was designated as a potential government relocation site in case of nuclear attack on Chicago." "So I'm walking through a government bunker system?" "More or less. The tunnels connect to similar networks under the University of Chicago, Northwestern Memorial Hospital, and several other strategic locations. What you're seeing is just the tip of a much larger iceberg." Sarah passed several branching corridors, following the directions on her tactical scanner. The device was remarkable. It showed her exact position, the layout of the tunnels ahead, and any heat signatures in the surrounding area. So far, she was alone. "Command, we're seeing some unusual activity on your scanner. Are you noticing anything out of the ordinary?" Sarah stopped and checked her device more carefully. There were indeed strange readings, not heat signatures, but something else. "I'm showing some kind of electronic interference about 50 meters ahead." "That could be surveillance equipment left by one of the hostile teams. Switch your scanner to detection mode and approach carefully."
Sarah activated the detection protocol, and her screen immediately lit up with warnings. Command, I'm reading multiple electronic devices ahead. Cameras, motion sensors, and something else I can't identify. Command, hold your position. We're analyzing your readings from here. While she waited, Sarah noticed something that made her heart race. There were footprints in the dust on the tunnel floor, recent footprints that definitely hadn't been made by her or the American forces. Colonel, someone else has been through here. Recently. We see that on your scanner. Sarah, we need you to very carefully backtrack about 20 meters, then take the service corridor to your left. We're going to route you around whatever they've set up. As Sarah retraced her steps, she heard something that made her freeze. Voices, speaking in what sounded like Chinese, echoing through the tunnels from somewhere ahead. Command, I can hear the Chinese team. They're in the tunnels. Copy that. Asset 1, we need you to activate your camera and get us visual intelligence on their position and equipment. Sarah fumbled with the pen-like camera device, extending it around the corner like Morrison had shown her. Her headset display immediately showed the feed from the camera, and what she saw made her stomach drop. 3 men in tactical gear were setting up equipment in a junction where several tunnels met. But they weren't just placing surveillance devices, they were installing something that looked much more dangerous. Command, they're not just watching the tunnels, they're setting up explosive charges. The silence on the communication channel was deafening. Finally, Torres's voice came through, tight with concern. Asset 1, can you get a clearer view of what type of explosives we're dealing with? Sarah carefully adjusted the camera angle, her hands shaking slightly. The devices the Chinese team was installing looked sophisticated, not crude pipe bombs, but military-grade charges with digital timers. They appear to be shaped charges, Colonel, and they're placing them at structural support points. Understood. Sarah, they're planning to collapse the tunnel system to prevent extraction. This changes everything. We need to accelerate the timeline. One of the Chinese operatives suddenly looked up, scanning the area. Sarah quickly pulled the camera back, her heart hammering. Had they detected the surveillance device? Asset 1, I'm reading elevated stress indicators from your biometric sensors. What's your status? I think one of them might have spotted the camera. They're looking around like they know something is wrong. Okay. New plan. We're going to create a diversion to draw them away from your position. In 60 seconds, there's going to be activity near the main campus entrance that should pull their attention. Use that window to move past their position. Sarah checked her tactical scanner again. The route to the observatory required passing within 30 feet from where the Chinese team was working. Even with a diversion, it would be incredibly risky. Colonel, what kind of diversion are we talking about? Let's just say the Russian team is about to get some unexpected visitors. Before Sarah could ask what that meant, her headset crackled with new chatter from multiple voices. Bravo team, you are cleared for engagement. Confirm targets at grid reference 77 Alpha. All units, we have authorization for direct action. Sarah realized what was happening. The American forces were about to engage the Russian team above ground, creating enough chaos to distract the Chinese operatives in the tunnels. The sounds of combat filtered down through the concrete, muffled gunfire, explosions, and shouting. The Chinese operatives immediately stopped what they were doing and began speaking rapidly into their own communication devices. Asset 1, this is your window. Move now. Sarah took a deep breath and began creeping through the tunnel system, using every bit of stealth she could muster. The Chinese operatives were completely focused on their communications, trying to coordinate with their support teams above ground. She made it past their position and continued toward the observatory, but her tactical scanner was now showing new problems. The electronic interference from their surveillance equipment was interfering with her navigation system. Command, I'm having trouble with my scanner. The Chinese surveillance network is creating too much interference. Switch to manual navigation, Asset 1. You should see a maintenance marker every 50 meters. Look for marker number 47. That's your turn toward the observatory. Sarah found the marker and turned into a narrower tunnel that angled upward. This part of the system was older, with bare concrete walls and minimal lighting, but according to her GPS, she was getting close to her destination. Asset 1. Be advised that the mobile extraction unit is in position at the observatory. ETA to your location is 5 minutes. Copy that. Command, but we have a new problem. I'm reading heat signatures ahead of me, and they're not moving like they're part of our team. Sarah crept forward until she could see around a bend in the tunnel. What she saw made her blood run cold. The Russian team hadn't been caught in the diversion above ground. They were already in the tunnels, and they were heading directly toward the observatory. Command, the Russians are down here. They're about 2 minutes ahead of me, moving toward the exact same location where you're setting up the extraction. The communication channel exploded with activity as Torres began coordinating a response. But Sarah realized something that the command team might not have considered. She was the only person who could see exactly where the Russian team was and what route they were taking. Colonel, I can track them without being detected. My position gives me a tactical advantage that your other assets don't have. Absolutely not, Sarah. Your job is to reach the extraction point safely, not to engage in surveillance of hostile forces. But if they reach the observatory before me, the extraction won't happen anyway, and if the Chinese blow the tunnels, we'll all be trapped down here. Sarah could hear Torres discussing options with her team, but she could also see on her scanner that the Russian operatives were moving faster than expected. They would reach the observatory in less than 3 minutes. She made a decision that would have terrified her 12 hours earlier, but now felt like the only logical choice available. Command, I'm going to shadow the Russian team and provide real-time intelligence on their movements. You can use that information to coordinate a response from your end. Asset 1, that is not authorized. Return to your planned route immediately. But Sarah was already moving, following the heat signatures on her scanner while staying far enough behind to avoid detection. As she crept through the tunnels, she began to understand something about herself that she'd never realized before. She was good at this. The careful observation skills her parents had unconsciously taught her, the ability to think strategically about complex problems, the capacity to stay calm under extreme pressure, all of it was coming together in a way that felt almost natural. Asset 1, Torres's voice came through the headset with a different tone. What's your current visual on the Russian team? Sarah extended her camera device around a corner. 3 operatives, heavily armed, moving in standard tactical formation. They're about 90 seconds from the observatory entrance. Can you identify their equipment loadout? Sarah studied the camera feed more carefully. The equipment the Russian team was installing looked sophisticated, not crude pipe bombs, but military-grade charges with digital timers. They appeared to be shaped charges, Colonel, and they're placing them at structural support points. Understood. Sarah, they're planning to collapse the tunnel system to prevent extraction. This changes everything. We need to accelerate the timeline.
The revelation that both enemy teams were planning to use explosives changed everything. Sarah found herself in the impossible position of being the only person who could provide real-time intelligence on 2 separate hostile forces, both of whom would kill her without hesitation if they discovered her presence. Asset 1, Torres's voice was grim. We need you to maintain surveillance on the Russian team while we deal with the Chinese explosives. Can you stay hidden while tracking their movements? I think so, but Colonel, there's something else. My scanner is picking up additional heat signatures. I think there are more people down here than we initially thought. Sarah adjusted her position to get a better view, and what she saw made her realize that this situation was even more complex than anyone had imagined. There were at least 8 people moving through the tunnel system, far more than the 6 Chinese operatives and 3 Russians they've been tracking. Command, we have additional hostiles. I'm counting at least 3 more teams moving through different sections of the tunnels. That's impossible. Morrison's voice crackled through the headset. Our intelligence indicated only 2 hostile teams. Then our intelligence was wrong, Sarah replied, watching her scanner as new heat signatures appeared. These aren't random infiltrators. They're moving in coordinated patterns. Someone else knows about this operation. Torres was silent for a moment, and Sarah could hear rapid conversation in the background of the command center. When the colonel came back on the line, her voice carried a weight that hadn't been there before. Sarah, we believe you've stumbled onto something much larger than a simple extraction operation. We think multiple foreign intelligence services have been planning this for months. What do you mean? The Chinese and Russians weren't working independently. This appears to be a coordinated international effort to acquire the quantum lock technology. Your extraction was supposed to be surgical and covert, but instead, we've walked into the middle of what amounts to a small-scale war being fought on American soil. Sarah's tactical scanner suddenly lit up with warnings. The additional teams weren't just moving randomly, they were converging on her position from multiple directions. Colonel, I think they know I'm down here. Multiple teams are moving toward my location. Impossible. You're using the most advanced stealth technology we have. Maybe the stealth technology isn't as advanced as the detection technology they're using. Sarah began moving quickly through the tunnels, trying to stay ahead of the converging heat signatures. But as she moved, she realized something that made her blood run cold. The tunnel system wasn't as extensive as she'd thought. There were only a limited number of routes, and the hostile teams were systematically cutting off her escape options. Command, they're hurting me. This isn't random movement. They're forcing me toward a specific location. Where does that tunnel lead? Sarah checked her GPS. I'm about 300 meters from the observatory, but I can't get there directly. They've blocked the main route. Alternative routes? 2 possibilities, but both take me deeper underground, and my scanner shows that's where most of the hostile teams are positioned. Taurus was quiet for a moment, clearly weighing options. Sarah, I need you to ask you something, and I need you to be completely honest. How confident are you in your ability to evade detection while moving through hostile territory? It was a question Sarah never thought she'd be asked, and the answer surprised her. More confident than I should be for someone who learned this stuff 3 hours ago. That's what I was afraid you'd say. What do you mean? Sarah, your parents didn't just encode genetic information into your DNA. They also spent your entire childhood unconsciously training you for exactly this type of situation. Every game they played with you, every safety drill they made you practice, every seemingly paranoid behavior they modeled, it was all preparation for the possibility that you might one day need to operate as an intelligence asset. The pieces suddenly fell into place. The elaborate hide-and-seek games that lasted for hours, the way their parents had taught her to memorize building layouts and always identify multiple exit routes, the strange exercises they called situational awareness training that she thought were just quirky family activities. They turned me into a spy without telling me. They gave you the skills to survive a situation exactly like this one, Taurus corrected, and right now, those skills might be the only thing that keeps you alive long enough for us to extract you. Sarah's tactical scanner showed that the hostile teams were still moving toward her, but their pattern had changed. Instead of trying to surround her, they seemed to be driving her toward a specific tunnel that led even deeper underground. Colonel, I think they want me to go somewhere specific. They're not trying to capture me here. They're trying to force me to move to a location of their choosing. Where does that tunnel lead? Sarah checked her mapping system. It connects to the old civil defense bunker system under downtown Evanston. If they get me down there, I'll be completely cut off from any extraction possibilities. Then we don't let that happen. Sarah, I'm going to ask you to do something that goes against every protocol we have. What? I want you to go on the offensive. The words hung in the air like an impossible challenge. You want me to attack trained intelligence operatives? I want you to disrupt their operation in a way they won't expect. You have advantages they don't know about: superior surveillance equipment, knowledge of the tunnel system, and the element of surprise. They're expecting you to run and hide. Instead, you're going to make them react to you. Sarah looked at her tactical scanner, studying the positions of the various teams. There were patterns in their movement, coordination points where their communications would be most vulnerable. What exactly are you suggesting?
The Chinese team set up a surveillance network in the tunnels. If you could disrupt that network, it would blind them and force them to relocate. The Russian team is using electronic jamming equipment to interfere with our communications. If you could disable that equipment, we could coordinate a much more effective response. And how exactly am I supposed to do that without getting killed? Morrison's voice joined the conversation. Sarah, you have tools that are designed to disrupt electronic systems. That scanner you're carrying, it has an EMP function that can disable electronics within a 50-meter radius. EMP? Like an electromagnetic pulse? Exactly. It's designed as a last resort, but if you can get close enough to their equipment without being detected, you can shut down their entire operation. Sarah studied her scanner again, looking for opportunities. The Chinese surveillance network had a central hub about 200 meters from her current position. The Russian jamming equipment was mobile, but it was currently stationary near what looks like a main intersection in the tunnel system. If I disable their electronics, won't that also interfere with my own equipment? Your equipment is hardened against EMP effects, but yes, there will be some temporary interference. You'll be partially blind for about 30 seconds after each use. The weight of the decision pressed down on Sarah. She could continue trying to evade detection and hope that the extraction team could somehow reach her, or she could take active steps to level the playing field. Colonel, if I do this, what are the chances I make it to the extraction point? Taurus was quiet for a long moment. Honestly, better than if you don't do it. Right now, they're controlling the situation. If you can disrupt their operations, it changes the dynamic completely. Sarah made her decision. Okay, I'm going after the Chinese surveillance network first. It's closer, and taking it out should make it harder for them to track my movements. Asset 1, you are authorized for direct action against hostile surveillance assets. Good hunting.
Moving through the tunnels toward the Chinese surveillance hub, Sarah felt a strange sense of calm settle over her. The panic and confusion of the morning had been replaced by something she'd never experienced before. Operational focus. Every lesson her parents had unconsciously taught her was coming together in a way that felt almost supernatural. Asset 1, you're approaching the target area. We're showing 3 hostile heat signatures in your vicinity. Sarah slowed her approach and activated her camera device. The Chinese operatives had set up their surveillance hub in a junction where 4 tunnels met, giving them visual control over a large section of the underground network. But they'd made a tactical error. They were so focused on monitoring the tunnels that they weren't watching for threats from within their own position. Command, I have visual on the surveillance hub. 3 operatives, multiple electronic devices, and what looks like a portable command center. Can you identify their communication equipment? Sarah adjusted her camera angle. Affirmative. They have a satellite uplink, multiple computer systems, and what appears to be the central server for their surveillance network. Perfect. The EMP device will disable all of it, but you need to be within 50 meters for maximum effectiveness. Can you get that close without being detected? Sarah studied the layout carefully. There was a maintenance alcove about 40 meters from the Chinese position that would give her the angle she needed, but getting there required crossing an open section of tunnel where she would be visible if any of the operatives turned around. I can reach the optimal position, but I'll be exposed for about 10 seconds during the approach. Asset 1, we're going to create a distraction. In 60 seconds, the Delta Force team is going to engage the Russian position near the main campus. The Chinese team will likely redirect their attention to coordinate with their surface assets. Sarah positioned herself at the edge of the open section of tunnel, waiting for the signal. Her tactical scanners showed the Chinese operatives clustered around their equipment, their attention focused on their monitors. The sound of explosions and gunfire echoed through the tunnels as the surface battle intensified. Exactly as predicted, all 3 Chinese operatives immediately turned toward their communication equipment, speaking rapidly into their headsets. Sarah moved. She crossed the open section of tunnel in 8 seconds, reaching the maintenance alcove without being detected. From this position, she had a clear line of sight to the surveillance hub and was well within the EMP device's effective range.
Asset 1, you're in position. When you activate the EMP, you'll have approximately 30 seconds of electronic blackout. Use that time to relocate to a different section of the tunnel system. Sarah looked at the EMP device, a simple button labeled with warnings about electromagnetic interference. Activating it would disable every piece of electronic equipment in the area, including the surveillance cameras that were currently tracking movement throughout the tunnels. Command, I'm ready to activate EMP. Confirm authorization. You are authorized for EMP activation. Execute when ready. Sarah pressed the button. The effect was immediate and dramatic. Every screen in the Chinese surveillance hub went dark simultaneously. Emergency lighting kicked in throughout the tunnel system as electrical circuits were temporarily overloaded. The Chinese operatives began shouting to each other, clearly panicked by the sudden loss of their technological advantage. But something unexpected happened. The EMP didn't just disable the Chinese equipment, it also triggered something in the tunnel system itself. Hidden panels in the walls began opening, revealing equipment that hadn't been visible before. Command, the EMP activated something in the tunnels. There are hidden systems throughout this area. Torres's voice crackled through the headset with significant interference. Asset 1. Those are Cold War-era automated defense systems. They're designed to activate during electronic warfare scenarios. Defense systems? What kind of defense systems? The kind designed to prevent hostile forces from using the tunnel network during a nuclear attack. Sarah, you need to get out of that area immediately. But as Sarah began moving, she realized that the automated systems weren't targeting her. They were targeting the Chinese operatives. Gas began filling the tunnel junction where the surveillance hub had been located, and she could hear the sound of heavy barriers sliding into place, sealing off sections of the tunnel network. Colonel, the systems are working in our favor. They're neutralizing the Chinese team. That's impossible. Those systems haven't been active for 30 years. Sarah's tactical scanner, which was slowly coming back online after the EMP, showed something that explained everything. Command, there are additional heat signatures in the tunnels. American heat signatures. I think our own people have been down here the entire time. The revelation changed everything. The tunnel system hadn't just been used for utilities and civil defense. It was still an active military installation, and Sarah's presence had triggered protocols that were designed to protect exactly the kind of intelligence asset she represented. Asset 1, proceed immediately to extraction point. We have authorization to fully activate the automated defense network. As Sarah moved through the tunnels toward the observatory, she watched her tactical scanner as the defense systems systematically isolated and neutralized the foreign operatives. Hidden sensors were tracking every person in the tunnels, and automated countermeasures were being deployed against anyone who wasn't broadcasting the correct identification codes. Command, how long have you known about these defense systems? The systems are classified beyond your clearance level, Sarah. What I can tell you is that they're designed to activate when critical intelligence assets are threatened in the tunnel network. Sarah realized that her parents' paranoia had been more justified than she had ever imagined. The tunnel system wasn't just a Cold War relic. It was an active component of America's intelligence infrastructure, and she had been unconsciously integrated into that system from birth. Asset 1, you're 200 meters from extraction point. The mobile unit is standing by. As Sarah approached the observatory access point, she could see light filtering down from above. After hours in the underground maze, the prospect of returning to the surface felt almost surreal. But her tactical scanner showed one final complication. There was still one heat signature moving through the tunnels toward her position, and it wasn't broadcasting any identification codes. Command, I have one remaining hostile approaching the extraction point, single individual approximately 100 meters behind my position. Asset 1, Delta Force team is in position at the observatory. You are cleared to proceed to extraction. We will handle the remaining threat. Sarah reached the access ladder that led up to the observatory basement. As she began climbing, she could hear footsteps echoing through the tunnel below her. Someone was still hunting her, even as automated defense systems swept through the underground network. She emerged into the observatory basement to find herself face to face with two figures in full Delta Force gear. But something about their positioning seemed wrong. They were facing her instead of watching for threats from the tunnels. "Miss Chen, please step away from the access point." Sarah's tactical scanner, still partially functional after the EMP, showed something that made her heart stop. The heat signature from the tunnel was now directly below the access point, but these two figures weren't showing up on her scanner at all.
"Who are you?" Sarah asked, her hand moving instinctively toward the panic button on her belt. "We're your extraction team," the taller figure replied, but something in his voice didn't match the authority she'd grown accustomed to from the real Delta Force operatives. Sarah's scanner finally came fully online, and what she saw confirmed her worst fears. These weren't American soldiers. The identification codes her scanner was reading were completely wrong, and their equipment, while similar to American gear, had subtle differences that marked it as foreign manufacture. "Command," she whispered into her headset. "I think I have a problem at the extraction point." But instead of Torres's voice, she heard only static. The fake soldiers had noticed her attempt to communicate and were moving closer. "Miss Chen, we need you to come with us immediately. There's been a change in the extraction protocol." Sarah backed toward the stairs leading to the main level of the observatory. "What kind of change?" "The original extraction team was compromised. We're your backup." It was a plausible lie, but Sarah's newly developed operational instincts were screaming warnings. Real Delta Force operatives wouldn't approach an asset this casually, and they certainly wouldn't fail to monitor the access point for additional threats. "Command, if you can hear me, I need immediate assistance at the observatory," she said into her headset, speaking loudly enough for the fake soldiers to hear. "Miss Chen, your communication equipment was damaged in the EMP blast. The team you think you've been talking to was actually us, guiding you to this location." That was definitely a lie. Sarah's equipment had been functioning throughout her journey, and she'd been receiving real-time intelligence that had proven accurate. These weren't her extraction team. They were the final trap in what had been an elaborate deception operation. "If you're really my extraction team," Sarah said, continuing to back up the stairs, "then you should know the code word Colonel Torres gave me." The two fake soldiers exchanged glances. "Code word? The word I'm supposed to say to confirm my identity to the extraction team." It was a bluff. Torres had never given her a code word, but their reaction confirmed her suspicions. Real American operatives would have known whether a code word protocol was in place. Sarah reached the main level of the observatory and found herself in a circular room dominated by an old telescope that hadn't been used in years. Moonlight filtered through windows near the ceiling, casting long shadows across equipment covered in dust sheets. "Miss Chen, you're making this more difficult than it needs to be," one of the fake soldiers said as they followed her up the stairs. "I'm making it exactly as difficult as it needs to be," Sarah replied, activating her tactical scanner to search for additional threats. What she found was both reassuring and terrifying. There were no additional hostile heat signatures in the observatory, but her scanner was now picking up multiple American signatures approaching the building from outside. The real extraction team was finally arriving. "You have about 30 seconds before this place is surrounded by actual American forces," Sarah told the fake soldiers. "I suggest you use that time to explain who you really are and what you want." The taller figure pulled off his helmet, revealing a face that looked European rather than American. "My name is Colonel Petrov, Russian SVR. Miss Chen, your government has been lying to you about everything." "What do you mean?" "The genetic encoding in your DNA, it's not just a component of an encryption system, it's a biological weapon designed to target specific genetic markers found primarily in Asian populations. Your parents didn't create a defensive system, they created a weapon of mass destruction." Sarah felt the world tilt around her. "That's impossible." "Is it? Think about it, Miss Chen. Why would encryption software require genetic components? Why would multiple foreign governments risk international incidents to acquire you? The quantum lock system isn't about communication security, it's about biological warfare." The accusation hit Sarah like a physical blow. Could her parents really have created something so monstrous? Could the American government be planning to use her DNA as a weapon? Even if that were true, giving myself up to Russian intelligence isn't exactly a better option. We're not here to extract you for Russia's benefit. We're here to help you escape from everyone, American, Chinese, Russian. There's a fourth option that no one has told you about. What fourth option? Petrov gestured to his companion, who produced a device that looked like a sophisticated medical scanner. We can neutralize the genetic encoding without the experimental procedure your government wants to perform. Our scientists have developed a treatment that will eliminate your value as a biological weapon while leaving you completely unharmed. And I'm supposed to trust Russian scientists over American ones? You're supposed to trust the option that doesn't involve years of protective custody or experimental medical procedures that might kill you. I heard voices outside the observatory, American voices coordinating an assault on the building. The real extraction team had arrived, but now she was faced with an impossible choice. Trust the Americans who had lied to her about the nature of her genetic encoding, or trust the Russians who might be lying about everything. Miss Chen, in about 10 seconds, American forces are going to storm this building. Once they have you, you'll never get another chance to choose your own fate. Sarah's tactical scanner showed heat signatures surrounding the observatory. The American team was preparing for a coordinated entry, probably assuming that she was being held hostage by hostile forces. How do I know you're telling the truth about the biological weapon? Because your scanner can analyze genetic targeting algorithms. Check the files we've uploaded to your tactical network. Sarah's scanner screen flickered, and new data appeared. Technical specifications that were far beyond her understanding, but the implications were clear enough. The genetic components of the quantum lock system weren't just encryption keys, they were targeting mechanisms for biological agents. Your parents created this because they thought it would prevent biological weapons from being used against Taiwan. They didn't realize that any targeting system can be reverse engineered to become a delivery system. The sound of boots on the stairs below indicated that the American forces had breached the building. Sarah had perhaps 30 seconds to make a decision that would determine her rest of life. If I go with you, what happens? You disappear completely. New identity, new life, somewhere safe from all governments. The genetic encoding is neutralized, and you become a normal person again. And if I stay with the Americans, you become a permanent asset of the United States government. Even if they're telling the truth about the experimental procedure working safely, you'll never be free. You'll always be too valuable and too dangerous to live a normal life. The footsteps were getting closer. Sarah could hear Torres's voice coordinating the assault team.
Sarah's mind raced through the impossible calculus of trust and survival. Every authority figure she'd encountered in the past 12 hours had lied to her about something crucial. Her parents had hidden her true nature, the American government had concealed the biological weapon implications, and now the Russians were offering salvation that seemed too good to be true. Asset 1, this is Colonel Torres. If you can hear me, respond immediately. Torres's voice came through her headset with crystal clarity, which meant the Russian jamming equipment had finally been neutralized. The static and interference that had plagued her communications were gone. Command, I'm at the observatory, but the situation has become complicated. Sarah, we have thermal imaging showing 3 individuals in the main chamber. Are you being held hostage? Sarah looked at the 2 Russian operatives, who were clearly listening to her conversation. Petrov nodded, indicating that she should tell the truth. Colonel, I'm not being held hostage, but I've been presented with information that contradicts everything you've told me about the quantum lock system. The silence on the communication channel lasted several seconds. When Torres responded, her voice carried a weight that hadn't been there before. Sarah, what kind of information? Information suggesting that the genetic encoding isn't just about encryption, that it's actually a targeting system for biological weapons. Another long pause. Asset 1, that information is above your clearance level and classified beyond what I can discuss over open communications. The non-denial was as revealing as any confirmation. Sarah felt her trust in the American operation crumble completely. So it's true? My parents turned me into a biological weapon? Sarah, the situation is more complicated than you understand. We need to extract you immediately so we can explain everything in a secure environment. Colonel, with respect, you've had 12 hours to explain everything, and instead you've lied to me about the most fundamental aspects of what's happening. Why should I trust you now? Petrov stepped closer to Sarah. Miss Chen, we need to make our decision. American forces will be here in less than 60 seconds. Sarah activated her tactical scanner one more time, studying the heat signatures surrounding the observatory. The American team was large, at least 12 operatives positioning themselves for a coordinated assault. They weren't taking any chances with her safety, but they also weren't taking any chances with her escape. Colonel Torres, I need you to answer one question honestly. If I cooperate with the extraction, will I ever be allowed to live a normal life? The pause that followed told Sarah everything she needed to know. Sarah, your safety and the security of the United States require that you remain under protective custody for the foreseeable future. But you'll be comfortable, you'll be safe, and you'll be serving your country. That's not a normal life, Colonel. That's a prison sentence. Asset 1, you need to understand that there are no good options here. The knowledge encoded in your DNA makes you a permanent target for hostile foreign governments. Protective custody isn't punishment, it's the only way to keep you alive. Sarah looked at Petrov, who was holding what appeared to be a transportation device, something that could presumably get them out of the observatory before the American forces completed their assault. How do I know your treatment will actually work? She asked him. You don't, Petrov admitted, but you know for certain that the American option will never give you your freedom back. The honesty decided her. After hours of lies, half-truths, and manipulations, someone was finally acknowledging the uncertainty of the situation. Colonel Torres, I'm sorry, but I can't accept a life in protective custody. I'm 18 years old, and I deserve the chance to make my own choices about my future. Sarah, you're making a terrible mistake. The Russians cannot protect you the way we can. Maybe not, but they are offering me something you won't, the possibility of freedom. Sarah turned to Petrov. If I do this, I want one guarantee. If your treatment doesn't work, if I'm still in danger from other governments, you help me disappear completely. No Russian intelligence value, no American intelligence value, just a normal person living a normal life. Agreed, Petrov said without hesitation. The sound of the assault team reaching the main chamber of the observatory was clearly audible now. Sarah had perhaps 15 seconds before American forces breached the main chamber. Colonel, Asset 1, final warning. Do not leave with hostile foreign operatives. We cannot guarantee your safety if you make that choice. Colonel, I can't guarantee my safety if I make any choice. At least this way, I'm making the choice myself. Petrov activated his transportation device, and Sarah heard the distant sound of a helicopter approaching. Not American, the engine noise was different, and it was approaching from the wrong direction. Sarah, Torres' voice was urgent now, you have 10 seconds to reconsider. Once you leave with them, we can't help you. Sarah thought about her parents, who had tried to protect her by embedding secrets in her DNA. She thought about the college life that had been torn away from her in a single morning. She thought about the years of protective custody that awaited her if she stayed, and the uncertain but potentially free future that awaited her if she left. Colonel Torres, I'm sorry, but I can't accept a life in protective custody. I'm 18 years old, and I deserve the chance to make my own choices about my future. Petrov activated his transportation device, and Sarah heard the distant sound of a helicopter approaching. Not American, the engine noise was different, and it was approaching from the wrong direction. Sarah, Torres' voice was urgent now, you have 10 seconds to reconsider. Once you leave with them, we can't help you. Sarah thought about her parents who had tried to protect her by embedding secrets in her DNA. She thought about the college life that had been torn away from her in a single morning. She thought about the years of protective custody that awaited her if she stayed, and the uncertain but potentially free future that awaited her if she left. Colonel Torres, I'm sorry, but tell my parents I love them and tell them I understand why they did what they did. But I'm choosing my own path now. The helicopter was directly overhead now, and Sarah could see rappelling equipment being lowered through a skylight she hadn't noticed before. Miss Chen, are you ready? Sarah looked around the observatory one last time, at the old telescope that had once been used to study distant stars, at the dusty equipment that represented decades of scientific discovery, and at the windows that showed the campus where she had been a normal student just 12 hours ago. "I'm ready," she said. As the rappelling lines descended, Sarah heard the assault team reaching the main chamber below. But by the time they reached the observatory's upper level, she was already gone, lifted into the night sky towards an uncertain but freely chosen future.
The helicopter lifted Sarah into the night sky above Northwestern University, and as she looked down through the aircraft's window, she could see the full scope of what had transpired. The campus was lit up like a military base, with emergency vehicles, government SUVs, and personnel carriers positioned throughout the area. What had started as a routine Tuesday morning had become an international incident that would undoubtedly make headlines around the world. "Ms. Chen," Petrov said over the helicopter's communication system, "we need to reach international waters before American fighter jets are scrambled to intercept us. The next few minutes will determine whether this escape was successful or merely the beginning of a much larger international crisis." Sarah strapped herself into the helicopter's safety harness, her mind still reeling from the decision she'd just made. Below them, she could see the lights of emergency vehicles converging on the observatory, and she wondered what Torres was thinking as she realized that her primary asset had just vanished into the night with foreign operatives. "How long until we're safe?" Sarah asked. "Define safe," Petrov replied grimly. "We'll be out of immediate American airspace in 12 minutes, but Ms. Chen, what you need to understand is that there is no safe anymore. By choosing to leave with us, you've made yourself a target for every intelligence agency in the world." "What do you mean?" "The Americans will now consider you a defector and a critical security breach. The Chinese will still want to capture you for the biological weapon technology, and frankly, there are factions within Russian intelligence who would prefer to see you eliminated rather than risk you falling into anyone else's hands." Sarah felt her stomach drop. "So you're saying I've made everything worse?" "I'm saying you've made everything more complicated, but complicated doesn't necessarily mean worse. It means unpredictable, and unpredictable situations sometimes offer opportunities that conventional approaches don't." The helicopter banked sharply to the east, heading toward Lake Michigan. She could see the lights of Chicago in the distance, a sprawling metropolis that had no idea it was witnessing the conclusion of one of the most significant intelligence operations in recent history. "Petrov, I need you to be completely honest with me about something." "What?" "The treatment you mentioned, the one that's supposed to neutralize the genetic encoding. How experimental is it?" Petrov was quiet for a moment. "More experimental than I initially indicated." "How much more experimental?" "Ms. Chen, the treatment has been tested on genetic samples in laboratory conditions, but never on a living human being. The theoretical models suggest it should work, but theories and reality don't always align." Sarah laughed bitterly. "So you're telling me I just traded certain captivity for possible death?" "I'm telling you that you traded certain captivity for uncertain freedom. The distinction matters more than you might think." As they flew over Lake Michigan, Sarah's thoughts turned to her parents. David and Alice Chen had spent years living with the knowledge that their daughter was a walking biological weapon, never able to tell her the truth, always knowing that someday this moment might come. The weight of that secret must have been unbearable. "Petrov, can I ask you something about my parents?" "What do you want to know?" "Did they know this day was coming? Did they know that eventually someone would come for me?" "Your parents have been in contact with multiple intelligence agencies for years, Ms. Chen. Not cooperating exactly, but not entirely uncooperative either. They've been walking a very careful line, trying to protect both you and the technology they created. Are they safe right now?" "As safe as anyone can be in this situation. The Americans need them alive to understand the full implications of the quantum lock system, and the other interested parties know that harming your parents would eliminate any chance of gaining your cooperation." The helicopter's pilot announced that they were approaching the rendezvous point, a small freighter in international waters that would take them to their next destination. As they descended toward the ship, Sarah realized that she was about to cross a line that could never be uncrossed. "Last chance to change your mind," Petrov said. "Once we land on that ship, you become an international fugitive. There will be no going back to your old life, regardless of whether the treatment works."
Sarah looked out at the dark waters of Lake Michigan, thinking about the life she was leaving behind. Her dorm room with its unmade bed and half-finished homework assignments. Her new friends who would wake up tomorrow to find their campus transformed into a crime scene. The professors who would never know that one of their students had become the center of an international incident. "I understand," she said finally. "But Petrov, I need one more guarantee." "What kind of guarantee?" "If this treatment works, if I'm no longer valuable as a biological weapon, I want you to help me contact my parents. I want them to know that I'm safe and that I don't blame them for what they did." "That might not be possible, Ms. Chen. Communication with your parents could compromise both your location and theirs." "Then make it possible. Find a way, because if I'm going to disappear from the world, I need them to know that I made this choice willingly and that I understand they were trying to protect me." The helicopter touched down on the freighter's deck, and Sarah found herself stepping onto a vessel that flew no flags and carried no identifying markings. The crew was international. She heard Russian, English, and what sounded like German being spoken as they secured the helicopter. "Welcome aboard the Meridian," Petrov said as we walked toward the ship's interior. "Your new life begins now." But as they entered the ship's main cabin, Sarah discovered that her new life was going to be more complicated than she had anticipated. There were other people aboard, people who looked like they'd also been extracted from impossible situations. "Ms. Chen," Petrov noticed her surprise, "meet your fellow passengers. Dr. Kim Sato, a Japanese biochemist who defected from a North Korean weapons program 6 months ago. James Morrison, a British intelligence analyst who exposed illegal surveillance operations in London. And Maria Vasquez, a Mexican journalist who uncovered corruption that reached the highest levels of multiple governments." Sarah looked around at the faces of people who had all made the same impossible choice she'd just made, to sacrifice everything they knew for the chance at freedom. "We're all refugees?" she asked. "We're all people who discovered that our governments valued us more as assets than as human beings. And we all chose to reclaim our humanity regardless of the cost." As the ship began moving away from the American coast, Sarah realized that her story wasn't ending, it was just beginning. She was no longer Sarah Chen, the Northwestern University freshman. She was no longer the daughter of 2 computer engineers from suburban Chicago. She was someone entirely new, someone whose future was unwritten and whose past was classified beyond anyone's clearance level. "Petrov," she said as they sailed into international waters, "when does the treatment begin?" "Tomorrow morning. Dr. Volkov, our lead geneticist, wants to run some preliminary tests first. But Ms. Chen, I need you to understand something about the treatment." "What?" "Even if it works perfectly, even if we successfully neutralize the genetic encoding, you'll never be completely safe. The knowledge that you once carried biological weapon technology will make you a target for the rest of your life. The treatment can eliminate your value as a weapon, but it can't eliminate your value as a symbol." Sarah stood at the ship's railing watching the lights of the American coast disappear into the darkness. Somewhere behind them, Delta Force helicopters were probably still searching the area, and intelligence analysts were trying to determine how a college freshman had outsmarted the most sophisticated surveillance network in the world. "Then I guess I'll have to learn to live with being a symbol," she said finally. "But at least I'll be a free symbol." As the Meridian sailed toward an uncertain destination, Sarah Chen began the process of becoming someone entirely new, someone whose story would never appear in any official records, but whose choice to prioritize freedom over security would inspire others facing similar impossible decisions. The girl who had worried about calculus tests and college parties was gone forever. In her place was someone stronger, someone who had looked into the heart of international espionage and chosen her own path through the darkness. And somewhere in the distance, Delta Force helicopters continued their search, unaware that their target was already beyond their reach, sailing toward a future that no intelligence agency could predict or control. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.